Good evening, everyone, friends. It's a beautiful early evening at Sankat Mochan Hanuman Temple. We're in our 15th week of reading, and we're in the middle of Sita and Ram's wedding. And Sita's mother and all the women have been waving lights to Ram, and now they're going to fetch Sita. And I love the part where the goddesses all came down to witness the beauty and are with the procession bringing Ram over. And it says, Sharda, Rama, Bhavani, and other goddesses who were pure-hearted and clever by nature assumed the disguise of lovely women and joined the royal gymnasium. They sang festive songs in a melodious voice, and as everyone was overcome with joy, no one could recognize them. Who should recognize whom? When everyone in the party proceeded in her ecstatic joy to join the ceremony of waving lights around the bridegroom, who was no other than the Supreme Spirit incarnate. Melodious songs were being sung, and kettle drums gently sounded. The gods rained down flowers, and everything looked most charming. All the women were delighted at heart to behold the bridegroom, who was the fountain of joy. Tears of love rushed to their lotus-like eyes, and their hair stood on their pretty limbs. The joy which Sita's mother felt in her heart on beholding Sri Ram in the attire of a bridegroom was more than 1,000 Shardas and Sheshish could tell in 100 kalpas. Restraining her tears out of regard for the auspicious occasion, Queen Sunayana performed the ceremony of waving lights with a gladdened heart, and duly completed all the rites prescribed by the Vedas as well as by family usage. The 5 kinds of music were being played, accompanied by 5 varieties of other sounds. The festive songs, carpets of different sorts were spread on the way. After waving lights, the queen offered water to Sri Ram for washing his hands, and the latter then proceeded to the pavilion. Dasarat shone in all his glory with his followers. His magnificence put to shame the guardians of the different worlds. From time to time, the gods rained down flowers, and the Brahmins recited auspicious texts appropriate to the occasion. There was such a great uproar in the heavens as well as in the city that no one could hear one's own words, much less of others. In this way, Sri Ram entered the pavilion. After offering him water to wash his hands with, he was conducted to his seat. When Ram was installed on the seat reserved for him, lights were waved around him, and everyone rejoiced to behold the bridegroom. Scattered about him, gems and raiments and ornaments in profusion, while women sang festival songs. Brahma and the other great gods witnessed the spectacle disguised as Brahmins, and as they gazed on the beauty of Sri Ram, who delighted Raghu's race, even as the sun brings joy to the lotuses, they regarded the privilege as the fulfillment of their life. Having gathered offerings about Sri Ram, the barbers, torchbearers, family bards, and dancers bowed their head and gladly invoked blessings on him with a heart overflowing with joy. Having observed every custom that derived its authority from the Vedas or from popular tradition, the 2 kings, Janak and Dasarat, embraced each other with great love. The 2 monarchs, while embracing each other, presented a glorious spectacle. Poets made repeated efforts to find a suitable analogy, but felt abashed at their failure. Finding no comparison anywhere, they felt baffled and concluded that the pair should be likened to themselves alone. The gods were enraptured to see the tie of love between the 2 kings united by marriage alliance. Raining down flowers, they began to sing the glories of both. Ever since Brahma created the world, we have witnessed and heard of many a marriage, but it's only today that we have seen the pomp and grandeur on both sides so well balanced in every respect, and the fathers of the bride and the bridegroom so well matched. Hearing the above voices from heaven, which was so charming yet so true, there was a flood of transcendent love on both sides. Unrolling beautiful carpets on the way and offering water to wash his hands with, Janak himself conducted Dasarat to the pavilion with all honor. The marvelous art of the pavilion and its charm captivated the heart even of sages. Yet the wise Janak fetched and placed with his own hands thrones for all the honored guests. He worshipped the sage Vashishta as if he were his own family deity, and supplicating before him received his blessings, while the supreme devotion with which he paid his homage to Kaushika was something too great for words. King Janak gladly adored Vamadeva, another family preceptor of King Dasarat, and the other rishis as well. He gave them all gorgeous seats and received blessings from all of them in return. Again, he paid divine honors to the king of Ayodhya, taking him to be the peer of Shiva, and none other, and mentioning how his fortune and rank had been enhanced through relation with King Dasarat. He made humble supplications to the latter and extolled him with joined palms. King Janak worshipped all the members of the bridegroom's family and party with the same honor in every respect as he had paid to the bridegroom's father and assigned appropriate seats to them all. How am I to describe with one tongue the warmth of his feeling? Janak honored the whole bridegroom's party with gifts, polite behavior, supplication, and sweet words. Brahma, Hari, Hara, and the guardians of the 8 quarters of the world, and the sun god, all of whom had knowledge of Sri Ram's glory, disguised themselves as noble Brahmins and witnessed the spectacle with great delight. Janak worshipped them as on par with gods, and though he recognized them not, assigned them exalted seats. Who should recognize and whom should one know, when everyone had forgotten one's own self? As they gazed on the bridegroom, who was bliss personified, joy was diffused on both sides, in the bridegroom's party as well as in the court of Janak. The all-wise Ram recognized the gods, worshipped them mentally, and assigned them seats of his own fancy. And the immortals were delighted at heart to perceive the congenial manner and gentle disposition of the Lord. The graceful eyes of all fondly drank in the beauty of Sri Ramachandra's countenance with the utmost love and rapture, even as the chakora bird feeds on the moon's rays. Perceiving that the time of wedding had arrived, Vashishta sent for Santananda with all the honor due to him, and on hearing the call, the latter came with all reverence. "Kindly go and bring the bride quickly now." Receiving the sage's order, he gladly left. The wise queen with her associates was highly pleased to hear the priest's message. She sent for a few Brahmin ladies and the elder ladies of the family, who performed the family rites and sang charming festival songs. The consort of the principal gods, who were disguised as mortal women, were all naturally lovely and in the prime of their youth. The ladies of Janak's household were delighted to see them, and even though none recognized them, the ladies held them dearer than their life. The queen honored them again and again, treating them on par with Uma, Rama, and Sharda. After adorning Sita and forming a circle about her, they joyously conducted her to the pavilion. Equipping themselves with auspicious materials, Sita's companions and other ladies conducted her to the pavilion with due honor. Each of them was lovely of form and had practiced all the 16 forms of adornment and moved with the grace of an elephant. As the sound of their melodious strain, the sages felt obliged to give up their meditation, and love's own cuckoos were abashed. Their ornaments for the toes and ankles and the charming bangles on their wrists produced a delightful sound, keeping tune with their songs. Sita, in her native loveliness, shone forth among the bevy of ladies as a charming personification of beauty in the midst of the graces. Sita's eloquence form baffles all description. So poor is my wit, and so surpassing her charm. When the members of the bridegroom party saw Sita approach, a veritable storehouse of beauty and spotless in every way, all greeted her from the core of their heart. At the sight of Janaki, Ram had his heart's desire fulfilled. King Dasarat, with all his other sons, were filled with delight. The joy of their heart could not be expressed. The gods made obeisance and rained down flowers, while the sages uttered their benedictions, which were the source of all blessings. The songs that the ladies sang, combined with the sound of kettle drums, produced a loud symphony. Men and women both were lost in love and rejoicing. In this manner Sita entered the pavilion, while great sages recited propitious text in great joy. The two family preceptors, Vasishta and Satyananda, performed all the religious rites and ceremonies and observed the family customs. Having observed the family customs, the gurus, in great joy, directed the Brahmins to worship Goddess Gauri and her son Ganesh. The gods accepted the homage in visible form and gave them blessings with great delight. Whatever auspicious articles, such as a mixture of honey, etc., the sages mentally sought at any particular moment, attendants stood ever ready with gold trays and pitchers full of that substance. The sun god himself lovingly pointed out the family usages, which were all scrupulously observed. Having thus caused Sita to worship the gods, the sages assigned her a beautiful throne. The mutual love with which Sita and Ram regarded each other could not be perceived by anyone. It was beyond the reach of the best mind, intellect, and speech. How then could a poet express it? While oblations were offered to the sacred fire, the fire god in person accepted the offerings with great delight, and the Vedas in the guise of Brahmins directed the procedure of the nuptial ceremony. What words can describe the world-renowned queen consort of Janak and Sita's mother? The Creator had exhausted in fashioning her all the bright glory, virtue, joy, and beauty. Perceiving the appropriate time, the great sage sent for her, and in response to their called married women whose husbands were alive, brought her with due honor. Queen Sunayana shone forth to Janak's left, even as Mena besides Himavan, the mountain king. The king and queen joyfully brought and placed with their own hands gold vases and beautiful trays of jewels filled with holy, scented, and auspicious water before Sri Ram. The sages recited the Vedas in joyous tones, and at the proper time, flowers rained down from the heavens. The royal couple were enraptured to behold the bridegroom and began to wash his holy feet. They began to lave Sri Ram's lotus feet. Their whole frame was thrilled with emotion. The sound of singing and kettle drums and shouts of victory in the heavens as well as in the city overflowed, as it were, in all directions. The lotus feet were ever sparkle in the lake of Shiva's bosom, by thinking of which for once the mind gets purified and all the impurities of the Kali age are driven away, by whose touch the sage Gautam's wife, who was full of sin, attained salvation, whose nectar in the form of the river Ganga adored Shambhu's head and is declared by the gods as the holiest of the holy, and by resorting to which, with their best bee-like minds, sages and mystics alike, the goal of their liking, it is those very feet that the most lucky Janak washed amidst shouts of victory from all the corners. Joining the palms of the bride and the bridegroom, both the family priests recited the genealogy of the two families, and perceiving that the bridegroom had accepted the bride's hand, Brahma and the other divinities, as well as men and sages, were filled with delight. As the king and queen gazed on the bridegroom, who was the very fountain of joy, the hair on their bodies stood erect, while their hearts were filled with rapture. And having gone through all the rites sanctioned either by the Vedas or by the family usage, the glorious King Janak gave his daughter to the bridegroom. As Himavan gave away Girija to the great Lord Shiv, and the deities presiding over seas bestowed Shri on Hari, so did Janak give Sita to Ram, and thereby earn fair renown for an unpreceded character. King Videha, Janak, was unable to make any supplication since the prince, Sri Ram, of swarthy complexion, had justified the name Videha. by making him forget everything about his body. When oblations had been offered to the sacred fire with due rite, the ends of the garments of the bride and the bridegroom were tied together as a token of their indissoluble union. The couple began to circumambulate the fire in order to show that the two had been united in the presence of the fire god as a witness. At the sound of the huzzas and the praises sung by the bards, the recitation of the Vedic text and the din of the festal songs, and the beating of the kettle drums, the wise immortals rejoiced and rained down flowers from the trees of paradise. The bride and bridegroom performed the circumambulations with charming paces, while all present feasted their admiring gaze on the spectacle. The lovely couple was beyond description. Whatever comparison might be suggested would fall short of the reality. Lovely images of Ram and Sita were reflected on the pillars of jewels and shone as if Love and his consort Rati witnessed Sri Ram's matchless wedding appearing in the numerous forms. Their curiosity and bashfulness were equally great. That's why they revealed themselves and were out of sight again and again. All the spectators were enraptured. Like Janak, they forgot all about themselves. Joyously the sages bade the bride and bridegroom pace around the fire and accomplish all the rites, including the ceremonial gifts. Sri Ram applied the vermilion to Sita's forehead, a sight the charm of which was altogether beyond description. It seemed as if a lotus surcharged with reddish pollen, a serpent thirsting for the nectar, decorated the moon. Then Vasishta gave the direction, and the bride and bridegroom sat together on the same seat. Sri Ram and Princess Janaki sat together on a costly seat, and King Dasarat was glad of heart to see them. Joy thrilled along his veins again and again as he perceived the wish-yielding tree of his meritorious deeds bear new fruit. There was rejoicing all over the universe. Everyone proclaimed that Sri Ram's wedding had been accomplished. With one tongue, how could anyone describe it? Full the joy with which knew bounds, no bounds. Then, receiving Vasishta's orders, Janak sent for the other three princesses, Mandavi, Shrutakirti, and Urmila, each clad in a bride's attire, the eldest daughter of his younger brother, who was the embodiment of goodness, virtue, joy, and beauty. He gave in marriage to Bharat after performing every rite with love. Janaki's younger sister, Urmila, whom he knew to be the crest jewel of charming girls, Janak gave in marriage to Lakshman with all honor. Finally, the bright-eyed and fair-faced princess Shrutakirti, who was a mine of all virtues and was well known for her beauty and amiability, the king gave to Ripusundana. When each pair of bride and bridegroom saw that they were well matched with each other, they felt shy, but rejoiced in their heart of hearts. Everyone joyfully applauded the beauty of each pair, while the gods rained down flowers. All the lovely brides with their handsome bridegrooms shone forth in the same pavilion as though the four states of consciousness, vis-a-vis walking, dream, sound sleep, and absorption, into Brahm, with the phase of the soul presiding over each gleamed all at once in the heart of an individual. The king of Ayodhya was delighted to see his 4 sons with their brides, as though that jewel of monarchs had realized the 4 ends of life, vis-a-vis worldly riches, religious merit, sensuous enjoyment, and liberation, along with the 4 processions of their realization: sacrificial performance, piety, practice of yoga, and spiritual exercise. All the other princes were married according to the same rites as have been described in the case of Sri Ram's marriage. The richness of the dowry was beyond description. The whole pavilion was packed with gold and jewels. There were a number of shawls, linens, and silks of various colors and designs, and of immense value. Elephants, chariots, horses, men-servant and maid-servants, and cows adorned with ornaments and vying with the cow of plenty, and many other things which were more than one could count and defied description. They alone who saw the dowry could have some idea of it. Even the guardians of the different realms regarded it with envy. The king of Ayodhya gladly adopted it all and gave to the beggars whatever they liked. Only that which was left was taken to the lodgings of the bridegroom's party. Then with joined palms, Janak honored the whole bridegroom party and spoke in gentle tones. Having honored the whole bridegroom party with courtesy, gifts, supplications, and compliments, King Janak joyfully paid his homage and greeted the great sages after bowing his loving attention to them. Bowing his head and evoking the gods, he addressed them all with joined palms. Gods and holy men, seek one's love alone. Can the ocean be propitiated by offering as much water as can be held within one's palms? Again, with joined palms, Janak and his younger brother submitted to the king of Koshal, and in winning words full of affection, courtesy, and sincerity. By our connection with you, O king, we have now been exalted in every respect, along with his kingdom and all that we possess. Pray look upon us both as your slaves purchased without any consideration. Taking these girls as your handmaidens, foster them with your unremitting kindness. Pardon me my offenses. It was too presumptuous on my part to have called you here. The ornament of the solar race, King Dasarat, in his turn flooded the bride's father with all kinds of honor. The courtesy they showed each other was past all telling, for their hearts overflowed with love. Hosts of gods rained down flowers, and King Dasarat proceeded to the palace where he and his party had been lodged, amidst the crash of kettle drums, shouts of victory, and the chanting of Vedic texts. There was much rejoicing both in the heavens and in the city. Then, receiving orders from the chief of sages, Vasishta, the lovely companions of the brides conducted them along with the bridegrooms to the apartments where the guardian deities of the family had been installed for worship during the wedding days. Again and again did Sita gaze on Sri Ram and shrink out of modesty. Her heart, however, refused to shrink. Her charming eyes, athirst with love, outshone the fish. Ram's swarthy form was naturally graceful. His beauty put to shame millions of cupids. Dyed with red lac, his lotus feet, which ever attracted the bee-like minds of sages, looked most lovely. His sacred and charming yellow loincloth outshone the rising sun as well as the lightning. The girdle around his waist, together with the sweet sounding bells, was sounding and chanting. His long arms were adorned with beautiful ornaments. The yellow sacred thread greatly enhanced his charm, while the rings on his fingers would ravish all hearts. Beautified with all sorts of wedding ornaments, he looked most charming. His broad chest was adorned with appropriate ornaments. He had a yellow scarf with fringes of pearls and gems, slung partially under his right armpit and partially across his left shoulder. He had a pair of lotus-like eyes and beautiful pendants dangling from the lobes of his ears, while his countenance was a storehouse of all comeliness. He had lovely eyebrows and a charming nose, and while the sacred mark on his forehead was an abode of loveliness, and his head was adorned with a beautiful wedding crown which had auspicious pearls and gems strung together and woven into it. Precious gems had been strung together and woven into the lovely wedding crown, and each of his limbs ravished the heart. At the side of the bridegroom, Sri Ram, the women of the city, as well as the pretty celestial ladies, all tore blades of grass in order to avert the evil eye. After scattering about him gems, raiments, and ornaments, they waved lights about him and sang festal songs. The gods rained down flowers, while bards and rhapsodists uttered his praises. Married women whose husbands were alive happily brought the brides and bridegrooms to the apartment reserved for the tutelary deities, and with festal songs they most lovingly began to perform customary rites. Goddess Gauri herself taught Ram how to offer a morsel of food to Sita, while Sharda urged Sita to do likewise with Ram. The whole Ganeshji was absorbed in the delight of the merrymaking. Everyone enjoyed the fruit of her birth. In the gems on her hands, Janaki saw the reflection of Sri Ram, the repository of beauty. Hence she dared not move her arm or eyes for fear of losing sight of him. The rapture and love that characterized the gaiety and mirth of the occasion surpassed all telling. Sita's companions alone knew them. They escorted all the 4 charming couples to the palace assigned to King Dasarat and his party. At the moment, blessings might be heard on all sides, and there was great exultation in the city as well as in the heavens. Everyone exclaimed with a delighted heart, "Long live the 4 lovely couples!" Great yogis and siddhas, eminent sages and divinities sounded their kettle drums on beholding the Lord, and rained down flowers, and crying, "Victory, victory, victory!" They gladly returned, each to their own realm. Then all the 4 princes with their brides approached their father. It appeared at the time as if the lodgings of the bridegroom's party overflowed with beauty, felicity, and joy. Then there was a banquet with a rich variety of dishes to which Janak invited all the members of the bridegroom's party. Carpets of incomparable beauty were spread on the way as King Dasarat sallied forth with his sons. The feet of all were reverently washed, and then they were seated on wooden seats according to their rank. Janak laved the feet of Dasarat, king of Ayodhya. His courtesy and affections were past telling. He then bathed Sri Ram's lotus feet that are enshrined in the lotus-like heart of Shiva. Similarly, he washed with his own hands the feet of the other 3 brothers also, treating them on a par with Sri Ram. King Janak assigned an appropriate seat to each guest and sent for all the cooks for service. Leaves joined together so as to serve for plates were set before the guests with due reverence, leaves which were made of precious stones that had been joined with golden pins. Clever and polite cooks passed round, and in a trice they served all with curry and boiled rice mixed with clarified butter extracted from cow's milk, all of which were pleasing and delicious and had been cooked with purity. Taking the 5 initial morsels as an oblation for the 5 vital airs, the guests commenced dining and were enraptured to hear songs full of raillery. Confections of various kinds, sweet as ambrosia and more delicious than one could describe, was served to them. Expert cooks then began to serve a variety of seasoned articles, which were too numerous to be named. Of the 4 categories of food mentioned in the scriptures, vis-a-vis 1, that which can be directly swallowed, 2, that which must be masticated before it can be gulped, 3, that which can be licked with the tongue, and 4, that which can be sucked. Each comprised an indescribable variety of dishes. Similarly, theirs were seasoned dishes of various kinds, having 6 different flavors, each flavor being exhibited in numberless varieties. As the dinner was progressing, women rallied in melodious strains, as men and women both mentioned, each by name. Even raillery at an opportune time is agreeable and welcome. King Dasarat and his whole party felt amused to hear it. In this way, the whole party dined, and in the end, they were all reverently supplied with water to rinse their mouths with. Offering betel leaves in due form, Janak paid his homage to King Dasarat and his company and the crown of all monarchs. Dasarat retired to his own apartment with a cheerful heart. Every day there was now festivals in the city. Days and nights passed like a moment. The jewel of King Dasarat woke up at a very early hour, and mendicants began to sing his praise. As he gazed upon the princes and their beautiful brides, the rapture of his soul was beyond telling. Having finished his morning routine, he called on his guru with a heart full of exultation and love. Making obeisance to him and paying him his homage, the king with joined palms addressed him in a voice steeped as it were in nectar. "Listen, O chief of sages. By your grace I have realized all my ambitions today. Now summoning all the Brahmins, O holy sir, present them with cows adorned in every way. On hearing these words, the preceptors applauded the king, and they sent for the troop of sages. Then came Vamadev, the celestial sage Narada, Valmiki, Jal, Bali, Vishwamitra, and a host of other great sages given to austerities. And we'll leave the wedding party there. Thank you.